My dad was a refugee from the Holocaust. People I grew up with have come at me, accusing me of being a Hamas supporter. This would be hard for my parents if they were still alive.
It hurts my soul to see a Jew argue for things against his own self-interest. At the end of the day, they are treated like a Jew time and time again.
I say post-Zionist because I acknowledge that I was once a Zionist.
The Second Temple, the last time there was a kingdom of Israel, 2,000 years ago, the Jews were fighting with Jews, and then we were conquered by all our enemies.
It's already a genocide, and it's already in my name.
Jews who are anti-Zionist are self-hating Jews.
This new old thing has taken over our society. Mockery, the relentless teardown of the other side. They're all hypocrites. They're all cowards. They're the enemy. To hell with them. The result? Relationships shattered, society split in half, with each of us taking sides. How many wonder, is there even another way? I've been a peacemaker for 20 years. There's another way. Two Jews. This is different than other episodes. It's not a conflict between traditional enemies, one group against another. It's not a Palestinian and a Jew. It's two people within the same tribe. When you're in conflict with somebody of another tribe, the pain hurts, cuts the skin, you can bleed to death. But within your own tribe, it cuts deeper, to the bone. I'd like to start with you, Ken. You're Jewish. Your people have a country. It's called Israel. What do you think about the state of Israel?
I have a lot of anger and frustration about where Israel has ended up. Even before the invasion by the Arab League armies in 1948, I think Israel was guilty of atrocities, most notably in Deir Yassin, placed in 1948 in a small village outside of Jerusalem. It was a flight full of terror. We see examples of that throughout Israeli history, which to me kind of contradicts the heroic version of the history which I learned at my dinner table, at my synagogue, at my Hebrew school. Zionism is an ideology which centers the histories and the scripture of Jews. There are aspirations in the Arab world to democracy, just like in our world, just like in the West, just like in Israel. Zionism has not only caused terrible harm to the Palestinians, but also to the region.
How you doing?
Doing good.
What's it like to hear some of this?
It's misaligned with what the ideology of what Zionism truly is. It's an ideology that I believe is, at its most basic form, just Jewish right to exist. In a Jewish land, we had to suffer for 2,000 years in the diaspora. We had to suffer through the Holocaust for the world to come to the realization that the establishment of a Jewish state is a vital necessity and a right of the Jewish people. The idea that Jews, the only Jewish country in the world, doesn't have that right like everybody else, it's offensive. Anti-Zionist Jews are misaligned. In Israel, they have the same conversations about the state of Israel and the government of Israel and how they've become fascist and a dictatorship and all of that. And then at the end of the conversation, I asked my Israeli friend, are you still a Zionist? And they get offended by such a ridiculous question because of course they believe Israel has a right to exist. I fear that we must fight for our state not only from our enemies who truly want to destroy us, but from within, from our own tribe. It's baffling to me how you could see an atrocity like October 7th happen against the Jewish people and then say, I'm anti-Zionist. If you want to have the conversation on how to improve the state, that's a great conversation to have, but we have to understand that the state does exist and it will exist.
My response to October 7th was, wow, these people, whoever they are, Hamas, the Palestinians, they knew that the response would be overwhelming show of force. And that brought me to this understanding. Things must suck so bad in Gaza, must be so desperate that they were willing to do this terrible atrocity. Where I have arrived is feeling like the Israeli leadership is guilty of ethnic cleansing, of apartheid, of genocide. I have a lot of depth in the history of apartheid. I've made films about it. I've traveled to South Africa. I've hung out with people who spent 25 years in prison with Nelson Mandela. I don't use these words lightly. It tears me up. It keeps me up at night.
Who is right about this? We try to persuade the other side that we are right, and we try to persuade an audience, whether they're present or not. Is the state of Israel justified in its existence and in its response potentially to October 7th, or is it inherently a state that engages in apartheid? Maybe one of you will agree.
I believe in a binational state, which is different from death to Israel. Everything, including its founding documents, including the early war of 1948, Israel has become a land of, for, and by the Jews. People who were there before, those people flooded the borders and went to their neighboring cities, some of them whose grandchildren are still in refugee camps in Lebanon, in Syria.
You tell me you've spent time with people who were prisoners with Nelson Mandela. How did he end apartheid? It was through a peaceful movement. We have not seen a peaceful movement come from the Palestinian people. And I'm waiting for the day, but I'm waiting for the day of the Mashiach. I am a Jew, and I want to live in Israel, the state that I know, with the people that are my culture.
I do tilt deeply into pacifism, and it is disappointing to me that the Palestinian resistance has included abhorrent acts. However, it is untrue to say that that is the only form of resistance that they have mounted. They have tried political resistance. There have been millions of protests, in the West Bank.
Jewish people are being held by this terrorist ideology, and I want to say let's focus on the peaceful ones, but there is a moral evil in the world that is holding our people. They knew launching October 7th would lead to a war in Gaza and the destruction of Gaza. They do not care about their own people. This war could end in a second if they release the hostages and surrender. But all that Hamas wants is power and to make Jews, Israel, suffer.
In the other similar late 20th century examples where there was a powerful people and a less powerful people, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, South Africa, the white South Africans, black South Africans. The more powerful party said, we cannot give them an inch of rope. If we do, they will destroy us. And what happened in each of those cases? Were white segregationists massacred, destroyed? No. What we don't know is how the Palestinians would respond to inclusion. We know how they respond to exclusion. We know how people around the world respond to exclusion.
Israel has taken steps to integrate Palestinians. For example, before October 7th, there were many Palestinians, Gazans, brought over by members of the kibbutzim who lived along the border to come and work in Israel. All we got from this was they mapped out the kibbutzim and they planned their attack, and it was hijacked by Hamas.
People who advocate for Israel and Zionism have always said Israel has always offered the olive branch and Palestinians have rejected it. What has Israel actually offered? Have they offered a path to Palestinian statehood and self-determination?
I've seen us leave the Gaza Strip in 2005. I've seen the Gaza Strip being taken over by Hamas. We've offered Gaza Strip, West Bank, and East Jerusalem. And it's been no, because there's the ideology of anti-Zionism. It's a one-state solution, and from the river to the sea, all of Israel.
Israel has not offered Palestinian statehood and self-determination, and the current government, Bibi, has overtly said he no longer supports the two-state solution, and two of his top ministers, as you know, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, are calling blatantly for genocide.
The one thing we have to learn from October 7th is we cannot live in a world where you have terrorists across your borders. I mean, Americans don't understand this.
When I hear from the river to the sea, I envision a binational state. I think they could build an incredible nation, the two peoples together.
What would you call it? Israelistine? I mean, it's like...
That's not my issue.
It is my issue, because I want to live in Israel, and Palestinians want to live in Palestine. It's a bit of a fantasy to believe we could all live in one state, kumbaya, together. And the idea that you don't want to see a Jewish state as a Jew offends me. And I feel like you are embarrassed by your religion.
I am the son of a Holocaust refugee. Judaism is a big part of my DNA. In our community, my wife and kids and our household was the house of choice for Jewish holiday celebration for 35 years now. I want to separate my critique of Zionism from this notion that somehow I'm not a real Jew. And I find that actually dangerous. That's a trope.
I never said that. If your mother is a Jewish, you are a Jew, whether you believe in God or not.
You did say something about that I'm uncomfortable with my heritage or something like that.
Yeah, I believe you're uncomfortable with your heritage.
Just to clarify, that's not who I am. That's not the case. Post-Zionism, to me, acknowledges a couple things. One, that I was a Zionist for the first 18, 19 years of my life. Two is that I believe that whatever utility Zionism had in 1945, 1948, when the Jewish state was found, has since changed with our changing world. And if Zionism includes, which I believe it does, the sidelining of the citizenship rights and human rights of Palestinians and the sequestering of them in Gaza and West Bank, that is a Zionism which I cannot and never will again support.
You visited Jerusalem and felt what it's like to be in front of the Kotel. Do you feel the history of that place and the land of Israel as a Jew?
When I went to Israel for the first time in 1978 as a teenager, I felt deeply my connection to Israel and its history, and even as a secular Jew, I felt a spiritual moment. When I went in '84, when Israel was at war with Lebanon and had begun what I think was an 18-year occupation of southern Lebanon, I felt it less, to be honest. Zionism, I believe, is a false messiah. There's a history of Jews following false messiahs. The state of Israel, I think, is a bit of a golden calf.
But critical of Zionism is different than being anti-Zionist, because critical means the state of Zionism today, the Israeli government, who is the face of the Zionist state, is, I oppose that, versus I oppose the existence of the state of Israel.
I do not support Israel as an ethno-state. If Israel were to become a binational state, I would support it. I would start writing checks again.
But do you have a problem with the entire Middle East being a Muslim state, made up of different Muslim states, explicitly Muslim states, where their constitution is the Quran? That's their choice to make. Why don't Jews have the decision to make it?
That sounds like an incisive question, but to me it ignores the history.
Once the state of Israel was created, all the Arab countries that once hosted vibrant Jewish communities said, get out. We don't want you anymore. Egypt used to have hundreds of thousands of Jews. So did Iran. So did Iraq. So did Syria. And now, because Israel has a state, they say, that's it. That's the only place, and that's the only place we have to return.
That is a selective retelling of the history. I mean, Jews continue.
It's the Jewish narrative of history.
Exactly. It's the Jewish narrative of history. It is selective.
Why can't I tell my story? Our people's story.
Of course you can. One thing we talk about at Passover is not only were the enslaved victimized by slavery, but the slavers were also victimized by slavery. We as Jews have become the perpetrators.
I want to ask you as we close this, are you convinced by the other person to any extent?
Ari makes compelling arguments. Their selectivity both makes them compelling to me, but not authoritative.
It's a fancy way of saying no.
That's very
that would be a no.
That's nice. I'm not convinced that Ken cares about the Jewish people as much as he should and understands the struggle of the Jewish people.
Now we're going to approach the conversation a different way. You were not convinced. And I don't know that you'll be convinced when we walk out of here that the other person is in the right. But I think there will be some different tenor to the way you feel.
It's hard for me to smile and go on with life when I know I have a friend, Yonatan Samarano, who was killed and kidnapped on October 7th.
Where I want to start is what I consider maybe the most instructive question about a person. What is beautiful in your life? It kind of shows your aspiration, what the world, or at least your personal world, would look like if it were constructed by you.
So the most beautiful thing in my life is my family. Been a couple for over 30 years. We just had our 30th anniversary of marriage. We are committed to each other, and we have 2 kids in their 20s. It feels like my truest destiny and my truest self is to be in a loving relationship. And one thing I didn't know about this as a young person was that love evolves and grows and deepens.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. I think my family too is one of the most beautiful things in my life. And my decision to move to Israel and leave my family was one of the hardest things I've had to come to terms with. There is nothing I love more in the world than going out to the beach in Herzliya, watching the sunset with close friends, and just having a good time. Still looking for a girlfriend in Israel, which ultimately, hopefully, I'll find a beautiful Israeli olive woman for me. And that's what I'm in search for that life that you have with your wife and kids.
I'm picturing it. You're on the beach, and you're watching the sunset, and you're hanging out with your friends. I just want to feel what you're feeling inside.
It's peacefulness, it's bliss. It's hard to cancel out the noise of the world and the problems and the internal issues and struggles, but it's the ability to relax and to look at the beauty in life and the beauty of the surroundings and the beauty of the community. Israeli society it's founded around the army. It's a people's army where everybody has to draft. I was put with a team of guys who came from all different backgrounds, all different locations, all different religious identities, political identities, and it's that combination where we're all forced into one common goal of defending the place that we all love living in.
You also talked about being a lone soldier, and what that meant in terms of integrating you and deepening your sense of community in Israel.
First, I am an immigrant to Israel, and the state of Israel does many things to help make my life easier. It's a community that welcomes more people to arrive, and I decided to become a lone soldier, meaning while my decision was to ultimately make Aliyah, which is a special word for immigration, specifically when Jews do it back to our ancestral land. No Israeli wants to join the army, but I did it out of necessity, out of a requirement of being a citizen. I have fulfilled the obligations of my country so that I have the right to live here. As a lone soldier, I am specifically invited to every single Shabbat dinner more than anybody else because they know I come without my family, without knowing the language, without knowing anybody in the country. Yet, if I start up a conversation, within 5 minutes I'll be invited to somebody's home for Shabbat meal. I'll be offered a ride to wherever I need to go. People take care of each other. There's a communal value in Israel. I mean, people are in everybody's business way too much, but in a loving and kind way.
Do you juxtapose that, compare that at all to your experience in the US?
Yeah, in America, I lost my sense of community. We're separate. We don't believe the same things. In Israel, no matter what, I'm proud. Every single person is proud to be an Israeli.
How long have you been there?
I've been there about 5 years now.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Do you have combat experience?
Yeah. I was in Gaza. I was there on the 7th of October. Before that, I was in the West Bank. I committed over 3 years of my life to serving the state of Israel. In Israel, it doesn't matter what you are, what your beliefs are, or how macho of a man you are. You draft and you serve and you protect. And I find beauty in that.
What you find beautiful is also this sense of community. It's this little community, this family that you've created. Describe how that fulfills you.
We are growing old together. We're both in our 60s now, and we have increasing visits to the doctor. You know, we have to drive each other. We have to take time off work and drive each other to medical tests and care for each other when we're recovering. Part of you says, where did the time go? You know, my back is hurting. And part of you says, wow, how lucky I am, you know, to have this in my life.
I'm jealous of you for that. I'll get there one day, I mean, but that is something I strive for.
I feel I belong here. I am of this family. I am both creator and beneficiary of this family.
I can picture that, the kind of the giver and the receiver, the cycle of that.
The giver and the receiver, and I never imagined that I would feel that. I do carpentry around the house. You know, I build stuff for her in the garden. I work on our house. You know, I swing a hammer. I love that.
Too, I love that.
Are you a carpenter?
I wouldn't say carpenter, but I love building. I built a half pipe on my roof in Herzliya where I live.
A half pipe?
A half pipe.
I like to get for boarding?
Yeah, I don't even
Sweet.
board, but it was a good idea to get into it once I built it.
Sweet.
I love building it. It's fun to work with your hands.
I do. That's what I do on the weekends. That's my hobby.
Yeah.
I want to turn this to the reciprocal. To understand a person, I think it's really important to understand what they love about life, but also what has been deeply painful for them. That carves a person and shapes them, I believe.
It's hard for me to smile and go on with life when I know I have a friend, Yonatan Samarano, who was killed and kidnapped on October 7th. He's still there, and his mother's still unable to bury her child. It's a failure of our people that we have Jews suffering. And it hurts me. There's the level of pain where my friend is gone. We'll never be able to hang out again. And then there's the level on top of that where I can't bury him. I can't bury the emotions with it. I can't move on. I can't begin to cope. The emotions are all over the place, and they're saddened and rageful, and I don't know where to place it. I don't know how to cope with it truly until I can bury him. Jews are meant to bury your dead within a day or two, to be able to move on and to cope and to appreciate the person's life.
That's intense. And I know that every Israeli has had that experience of losing a Yonatan, someone they love. That's something we as Americans can't really fathom. I almost lost one of my children as a 20-year-old. It's something I never could have understood, or hard to even describe, and we came close, and he recovered. When I did not know if my kid would live or die, which was that was about a day, and then there were about 2 or 3 days where we didn't know if there would be permanent damage. I'm not a religious man. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I felt impotent, powerless, and despairing. And my relationship with this kid is very special in a way that, like that with my wife, I'd never experienced before, or with anybody else. Of not having him was very, very heavy.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, is he all right?
Yes, on his way.
And it's the reciprocal of this cocoon of meaning that you have created.
Exactly. It is the opposite of all of the goodness and beauty that my experience with my family, the idea that we might be a family of 3 and that I might not be able to do anything about it.
I dream of having that connection that you have with your son.
And it sounds like that's in part why you're in Israel.
Exactly. I mean, that is what I search for. And what I think I'm slowly finding. It's an everlasting story.
What has been the most profound experience of your life?
For me, it was the day I made Aliyah, the day I moved to Israel. The story, my legacy, my dynasty of my children's children will tell the story of how their great-grandfather came back to our ancestral homeland and was able to build a story.
I have this image of you before you left the U.S., like a piece of yarn or a piece of cloth kind of blowing in the wind a little bit, and your life creating this weave now of these people in the army, this community, this nation, that you're not flapping anymore.
A part of the community, and I'm finding my way and my future and my path. I love to sew it together and see the end product and take a step back.
So what is the most profound experience of your life?
You know, the coming together with my wife, the conceiving of our children.
Can you recall a particularly poignant, exceptional experience?
Well, the moment of our child coming out of my wife's body is, you feel like, you know, as a non-religious man, I feel like, well, you know, God's in the room. This is otherworldly.
Having been through it myself with 2 children, there's this piercing of the veil of life, that you're looking at the other side of non-existence and existence.
You know, I identify as an atheist. It was a spiritual moment. There was a before and after.
Yeah. And for both of you, and you're not unique in this way, your most profound moments, the most painful moments, are all about relationship. What are you most proud of?
The thing that I'm most proud that I did, besides my decision to come to Israel, it's my time in Israel, which has been my service in the IDF. I'm most proud that I was able to get through it and have my chin up during it.
Proud of your fortitude.
Fortitude. Most of the time in the Army sucks, and it's no fun, and it's hard to remind yourself of the pride of defending the state of Israel, the sacrifice.
Yeah, so it's not just the fortitude, it's also the contribution that you've made to your people.
Yeah, I'm proud that I did it for a bigger goal, not of myself.
So one more question in this segment of just basically getting to know you outside of politics. What wisdom would you offer the world? On your deathbed, you're looking back and you say, this is what I want people to know. If you're going to listen to me, listen to this.
The most important and influential things in my life are Shabbat and being able to sit down and enjoy a meal together.
Why? What do you feel on Shabbat?
You know, fight throughout the week, but take a day to yourself, to your family. It's a special day, especially in Israel. No shops are open, buses aren't running, and it's just like the country stops for a moment.
I think longingly, actually, of COVID in some ways.
Yeah.
Because that was a beautiful time to just walk through the streets and there weren't cars.
Exactly.
My one-word answer would be listen. And more specifically, I would say find your perceived adversary and have coffee, hear their story. Tell yours. But really listen to their story silently.
Why?
To listen is in service of creating peace. Waging peace, I think, should be the pinnacle goal of being alive.
Because what is war?
Pain, suffering, terror, rape, destruction, murder of innocent children and old people.
I see you care about everybody in the world, and I feel that compassion.
So we started with the two of you essentially trying to convince each other that your positions were right, that the other side was wrong. We then moved to a different model, which was first to get to understand each other as people. And now we're going to integrate that into politics. Please share a story about your upbringing. What's necessary for us to understand where you are politically today?
I'll go. My mom used to say to me, Israel is like my child. I will always side with her, right or wrong. My dad, as a Holocaust refugee, also felt that Israel was necessary for our collective survival. But it has been a long journey for me. When I was in college at Berkeley, an Israeli man showed me some copies of newspaper articles which were very critical of Israel. I think he was probably communist or socialist. And this guy said, what about this? And I said, wait, Israel's only been involved in 3 wars and they were all defensive, 1948, 1967, 1973. This was probably 79, 80. And he said, oh, but you forgot the Suez campaign in late 50s. I said, no such thing, I never heard of it. That small moment was actually the beginning of kind of a reconsideration, which began a 40-year evolution of my understanding of Zionism. So the pulling away from the Zionist dream and the valuing of Israel sort of above all other countries, it came in fits and starts. I found until recently is that when I was in dialogue with pro-Palestinian, pro-Arab, anti-Israelis, I made the Israeli case. I made the argument that the IDF was a moral army, that all of Israel's armed struggles were defensive, the Middle East, that the rest of the Middle East was an effing mess, led by autocratic, horrible leaders. My dad's experience as a refugee, Vienna's Jews were basically exterminated, my grandpa being one of them. It's been a long process where I can now call myself a post-Zionist. Internal development I went through was sort of embracing ideas like pacifism, participating in every anti-war protest of my life. 1983.
What appealed to you in those philosophies?
So pacifism is not, there was nothing passive about Martin Luther King or about Gandhi or about Mandela. They all put their bodies in the front lines of change. They took tremendous risks. Many of them gave their lives. And they did so because they believed that by taking up arms, they would escalate whatever conflict there was. But by approaching their adversary as humans, that they would actually possibly break the chains of conflict.
What attracted you to those philosophies? You're a kid, okay? And you described yourself to me as being attracted to these stories. And it wasn't necessarily part of your family's lore.
Question authority was always attractive to me. Question what you're being told.
You can question authority by shooting someone in the head.
Yeah, and that's why pacifism is a better answer.
So why? Is it strategic?
And when I study the history of Gandhi or of Mandela or of MLK, I believe that MLK achieved much more than more violent forms of black nationalism. I believe that Mandela achieved much more than other forms of armed struggle in Africa.
I love that you're a pacifist, and I would love to be a pacifist. And the idea of war is bad. I fully don't support war for war's sake.
What I ask is uncomfortable because it's not natural. I'm not asking to have a normal conversation right now. And we're going to get to your views on this. But right now, I'd like to just explore Ken's views. May I ask you a question? And this will separate the strategic from potentially the moral from your standpoint. If you could press a button and make those people disappear, and it would be strategically in the interest of your movement, would you do so?
You want an honest answer?
Yes.
I don't know.
If I could press a button to make Hamas go away, I would press the button. Would you?
To make Hamas go away?
Hostages are released.
What does Hamas
Palestine
mean?
is
What does
free.
Hamas mean?
It's really hard
Sorry.
what I'm asking, and I'm asking you if you can, because it's going to be even more important as we're moving forward, for you to be totally invested in understanding him.
Part of the problem with not just Zionism, but any form of tribalism, is that we lose sight of the fact that our people, whoever our is, whoever we is, have been victim and perpetrator.
So you're going again to the theoretical, which is okay.
Okay.
But I'm really wanting to understand what your experience was as this young man developing these views. Can you tell me when you started to feel pain for the Palestinian people?
When I had a deepening friendship with a Palestinian man who was partnered to a very dear friend of mine. He was Lebanese Palestinian. His parents came from a village which is now a Jewish town. It was rather harrowing to hear the lived experience of Palestinians from 1948 to
he
then.
recounted that for you and shared their suffering.
This person's been a friend of mine for about 20 years. We've wrestled on and off for many years about this before I actually feel like I was able to feel what he was telling me.
And then you felt it.
And then I felt it.
I'm curious to know how, coming from grandparents who were Holocaust survivors, father, you split away from your father who overcame the Holocaust, saying, Israel needs to exist as the state of Israel.
It was hard because I did not want them to feel dishonored, even though I felt this was the most Jewish thing I could do, was to follow what I thought was a path of righteousness.
What about your evolution? You went from a Bay Area kid where liberal is the way to be. But if there's a war and the world is developing into this people against that people, I'm going to defend my people.
That is my greatest fear, that it turns into this tribal world. I see the value in Israel, in the idea of Zionism, the state existing as a safeguard to the tribal world we're living in. We've fought many enemies, whether it's the Romans, the Mongols, the Crusaders, the Egyptians, or the Palestinians. We've had many wars in the history of Judaism. But Judaism, Zionism, has nothing to do with that. Zionism is, I want a place where I could seek refuge, where I could freely be a Jew, where I can relate to a community of like-minded individuals that support the basic ideals and ideologies of having a Jewish and democratic state. A lot of my friends from high school, my non-Jewish friends from high school, no longer talk to me or speak to me, block me on Instagram. And I've tried to reach out, but it's been met with backlash and misunderstanding.
So what's it like with your parents in terms of your leaving and your sort of secular identity?
Israel has always been an important part of my family's story, whether it was my great-grandmother who fled after the Holocaust to seek refuge in Israel, me telling my mom, hey, I want to leave the home and live in some few thousand miles away. It's hard for her, but she understands. I'm blessed to have such a supportive family.
Are there places where you have internal conflicts about Israel, if you have them at all?
Once I moved to Israel, I realized this place is pretty messed up. Politics here suck. I currently would not vote for the current prime minister. I want to vote him out in the next elections. I fear about the democratic backsliding.
Do you feel this rightward turn in Israel? And if so, how do you navigate that?
The rise of the far right in Israel is a scary reality of a reaction to the world we live in today. And radicals breed radicals who breed radicals. As long as Ben Gvir exists, Hamas will exist. And as long as Hamas exists, there'll be more people voting for Ben Gvir and more people going to Hamas. They legitimize each other. And they polarize this world. And it's a problem. I believe in pacifist Zionism. I believe Israel has the right to exist. I believe the Palestinians have the right to exist. When you criticize Zionism, it's It's just an unproductive conversation, and we can't talk about peace.
I believe that the Palestinian people yearn for democracy.
You have this concern that unless the thought is different about Palestinians embracing peace, there can't be peace. And you're expressing this in service of Palestinians and Jews. Is that, do I have that right?
Yes.
What I hear you saying is that Israelis need to be more considerate and understand that we must love our neighbors as ourselves.
Why does he want that?
I think it's because you don't truly relate to your faith and value your faith as much and see the universe.
So I'm asking you why he said he wants that. Where you're not evaluating him and you're not analyzing him.
I see you care about everybody in the world, and I feel that compassion. I want to better understand that compassion.
Again, you're going to be understood by a Zionist, and Zionists who are listening, watching. What do they not understand?
Unconditional support of Israel is responsible for the suffering and violence experienced by Palestinians.
So I'm not asking you to adopt his belief. I'm asking you for a moment to inhabit it. What does he believe?
Jews' blind support for Israel inherently exacerbates the situation in Israel. I see how that's a fear of yours.
You got about 70% of it.
Help me understand.
If Israel did not have, the diasporic support, the military support, the diplomatic cover, they would have to negotiate like any nations in a conflict zone would, building the Iron Dome, or having nuclear weapons in their disposal if they want them, or having the 2,000-pound bunker buster bomb. And I think those have not solved the conflict. I think those have exacerbated the suffering of innocent Palestinians. I am pro-peace and anti-war, but I'm not pro-Palestinian and anti-Jew, or pro-Arab and anti-Israel. That's not what this is about for me.
I want to ask you what anti-Zionists, in your view, do not understand it.
The ideology of Hamas, the ideology of anti-Zionism, the destruction of the state of Israel, these are all the same thing to me. The acknowledgement of each side's right to exist is the only way where we will come together and say, this is my cousin, this is my neighbor.
You believe that the path to peace goes through Zionism, that if we embrace the right of Jews to have a Jewish state called Israel, that it would serve not only the Jews and the Palestinians, but the world.
I'm hearing him say, there's a whole country of people who are not going to give up their right to exist as a Jewish people. And so it's simply impractical for people to advocate for a peaceful solution which does not involve the right of Israel to exist. It simply has no future, and it brings war.
You believe anti-Zionism will fail because it will never take root in Israel, that Israelis will continue to support the Zionist vision.
I mean, people in Israel question the Palestinians' identity, whether Palestine existed 2,000 years ago. But those are irrelevant conversations. Today, in the world we live in today, Israelis exist, Palestinians exist, the state of Israel exists, and I believe that the state of Palestine should exist.
When the statehood of Jews is questioned, Israelis feel both angered and reactive and mistreated, and they feel that's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, that's exactly. I want to know better what post-Zionism is, because I honestly, this is a new concept for me.
It's personal because I acknowledge that I was Zionist for the first part of my life, and I was a proud Zionist, and it fulfilled me. The feeling you described of stepping off the plane, I felt that. I mean, I wasn't making all the but I was with a group of other 15 and 16-year-olds. Some of us kissed the ground. I don't have that anymore. I don't have that feeling. It's an acknowledgement that I am not where I used to be, and it's also kind of a critical question is it still viable, like it was in 1948, to think of an ethno-state, a state where Jews have privileges that others don't.
Yeah. I hear it as an evolution from Zionism to, wait, this isn't what I signed up for. The Jewish people don't necessarily need this, And they're treating other people like shit.
Yeah.
That's what as I'm hearing
Yeah.
you define post-Zionism.
Yes, it is correct. It means, again, I'm for the binational state,
Yeah.
which to me does not mean the destruction of Israel. It just means the end of Israel as an ethno-state. I don't want an expulsion of the 7 million Jews.
Is a country like Saudi Arabia or a Middle Eastern country that has Islam as one of their core values an ethno-state?
It's a fair question, and I don't know the answer. If you and I woke up on an alternative reality tomorrow, we're having Shabbat dinner together,
Yeah.
We're drinking wine, and then we get a communique that, guess what? There's an independent Palestinian state now called
Yeah.
Palestine. What I call Israel proper, 48 borders Israel, an ethno-state, I don't think so.
It sounds like the people in Israel, maybe he doesn't love the way that they're treated, but he's not. That's not his big issue. His big issue is
The West Bank
and Gaza.
I want to hear a little bit more about how you're doing today around the war in Gaza.
My first fear is that the combat I did in Gaza was for nothing, and I just exacerbated the issue. But my fear more than that is that my children will fight the same exact war that I fought in Gaza, and for the same pointless reasons. It terrifies me that if October 7th isn't the one to make us be like, oh, we got to fix our issues, we got to prevent war in the future, then I don't know what it's going to take for us to come to that realization.
Okay, let's take a break, and then we have a final segment.
Okay, I'm glad I brought my tofu sandwich. Are you kosher, Ari?
No. I try to be. But the thing is I just love the taste of bacon.
Oh, me too, by the way.
That's it.
I'm a bacon vegetarian.
I want this war to end, and I want to be a pacifist. I don't want my children to go fight and join the army. I want to live in a world that you believe in.
The deepest experience of the other person that I've found is that you occupy them. You demonstrate for the other person that you completely understand them by being their advocate. And so what I ask you to do is switch seats. This segment I call identity confusion, and the goal is for you to not really know who you are. It's my belief that people can easily do this because basically where we differ from other people is just our beliefs. If you adopt someone else's beliefs, you basically can live their experience pretty easily. So I ask you to fully adopt their beliefs and then just live it. Who's willing to listen first?
I think you're a better listener.
So you'll start?
I'll start.
You are Ken.
Mm-hmm.
You're a post-Zionist Jew
Mm-hmm.
with all that experience and beliefs.
Every human should be treated equally. The national identities of individual peoples should not be prioritized over the identity of the human race.
Why is that important to you? Those aren't your people.
As long as there is suffering in the world, it is everybody's responsibility to advocate against it. Suffering is wrong, inherently. The Zionist ideology has manifested into an ideology that believe it's higher or better than the other people that are also living in the land, and all people have the right to freedom from oppression and freedom from suffering. The ideologies that took us through the 20th century, those ideologies are inherently flawed. As Ken, I believe Zionism is a 20th century ideology, started a little bit before, whether it's Israeli nationalism, Palestinian nationalism, Jordanian, Egyptian. All of these ideologies were ultimately brought by colonial imperial powers like the British, meant to divide and conquer the land.
What does it do to you when you see people suffer?
It is based in my religion, in the story, in the theme of Passover. Nobody should be a slave to anybody, and everybody deserves freedom, and it is rooted in my religion.
You are Ari. You are obviously a Zionist. You live in Israel. You were in the army. What do anti-Zionists not understand?
People who question that Zionist vision don't understand the history of the Jews. And I take it a step further. People who don't understand that necessity are not accepting or embracing the survival of the Jewish people.
I understand how you want to see the security, the longevity of your people and your ideals.
Is he understanding you in the way you'd like to be about that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is he understanding you with the depth with which you feel it?
Yes, I think you got it.
I would say he hasn't. If you're really Ari, you don't believe that Ken really feels the pain of his people, the real fear of it, the sense of community that it brings. I would say that's, he parroted the words, but I really ask you as Ari to go deeply into the feeling and evaluate whether this person is really getting you.
Mm. You know, we all have shelters underneath our homes and our schools, or we know where they are when we go shopping. I could die when I go home to Israel next week in a random bomb blast by someone who doesn't know me. I could be dancing at a rave or a concert and be shot down for no reason other than I happen to be doing that dance in Israel. They don't even know if I'm Jewish, Thai. October 7th is not a news story for me. It's a very real fear. And it's not that I think it might happen again. I know it will happen again. They've told us it will happen again. I don't know if you've ever heard those air raids when you're shopping on Dizengoff Street. Is it that crazed guy with a gun who hates me because I'm Jewish? You will never really know that. Mm-hmm. Anti-Zionism is a kissing cousin of anti-Semitism. I wonder if you value, Palestinians and Islam more than our own people.
I don't think as an anti-Zionist I prioritize Islam more than Judaism. I just see humans as humans and not one above the other. I think that the ideals of Zionism have been manipulated. Zionism has manifested into an ideology of oppression.
We saw our sisters, our daughters, being stripped down and we assume sexually assaulted. Some taken away on the backs of motorcycles and the backs of pickup trucks. And then we saw the world react soon after with a certain callousness that we, Israel, were almost immediately blamed for this. And then within days, we had the specter of protesters around the world not waving anti-Hamas signs, but waving anti-Israel signs. So, for us in Israel, we didn't need any more evidence that anti-Semitism is alive. The world wouldn't give a rat's ass if we were wiped off the map.
You want to hear a joke? A Zionist Jew and anti-Zionist Jew walk into a bar, and the bartender goes, "Hey, we don't serve Jews here." It's hard doing on the other side, but I really just wanted to say the joke.
I want to ask you both again, before we end this, what would you, as a anti-Zionist Jew, like the Zionist Jew to understand?
I think you don't understand the struggle I face and the backlash I've gotten as a Jew to voice my opinion for the other side.
I hear you saying that your belief of what Judaism is, which is to speak out for those whose voice is being silenced. And you have felt the harsh boot of on your neck of those of fellow Jews who don't believe that your position is valid. I fear that anti-Zionist Jews ultimately weaken our position in the world and thus might even increase the threat that we face from our adversaries.
Is there anything more?
If Hamas ruled the whole region, what would happen to the 7 million Jews in what we now call Israel? Are you willing to risk those 7 million Israeli Jews?
I have to identify myself as a post-Zionist instead of an anti-Zionist today, because people who say I'm an anti-Zionist call me an anti-Semitic, and ultimately my idea of post-Zionism is just that Israel needs to change. And calling for that change isn't anti-Semitic. It's in the belief that there could be a place for both people in the land living together under one flag. It's not rooted in the destruction of the state of Israel. It's reforming the system that is created and that we have today.
Very good. You nailed it.
All right, let's switch back. Let's all slump for a second. Ah, that feels good.
There's some chair yoga here.
I get all of these ads for chair yoga.
Me too.
Like guys my age who are like, getting rid of their belly.
And they show after 6 weeks of this, you're totally ripped.
Yeah.
Right? Wait a couple decades, they're going to start sending you the ED stuff too. And they're
no.
no, really? Am I already there?
You're back as you, Ari.
Mm-hmm.
Ken?
I think it was not difficult for me to play Ari because part of my personal arc was in alignment with Ari's current philosophy. I was transported back into that lens in which I centered the experience of the Jews, of the Jewish people, and my belief as a Zionist that our existence was under threat. So I didn't learn new facts, but I do feel like I remembered what it was like to feel that feeling, that existential crisis that I think Zionists, modern contemporary Zionists still feel.
And then you had a Zionist attempting at least to understand you at depth.
There's understanding and there's understanding. And understanding is a type of mirroring where I could say the words back to you that you said to me. Understanding is where I say, OMFG, I hadn't thought about it that way before. I don't want to project on what Ari experienced in that moment, but I wonder if he experienced understanding on both those levels.
Okay, so maybe we'll find out.
I think I was able to embody that. I felt like I was able to advocate on the side of the minority, which as a Jew, taking the side of the Palestinians, it feels like you're targeted. I know Ken feels that it's care for other people, and it's not anti-Semitic to care for other people.
Also, Ken played Ari, who is a Zionist.
Yeah.
And he tried to articulate a Zionist perspective.
Watching Ken play my part is healing in a way. It's the acknowledgement of my identity and my beliefs and my culture and my people. And that's the thing I want most in the world, just to be heard and identified. Before I did this talk, I didn't want to sit down and legitimize an anti-Zionist Jew. And it's still hard for me to have this conversation. I'm not convinced that anti-Zionism is a legitimate form of criticism of Israel. I appreciate that you were able to take my side and see some of the things that I value.
So then, what, if any, is the value of you guys coming together and speaking?
My parents had this idea that Jews don't air our dirty laundry. This is another one of my breaks from my parents. Part to me of the Jewish path is to speak out. We have a long history of activism, of critical thinking. We are people of the book. There are lots of Nobel Prize winners who are Jews. There are lots of people who are filmmakers and novelists and poets. We engage with the public. We engage with the word. We argue.
Is there any value in the other person's position?
I think it's incredibly important that we have Israelis and Jews who are advocating for the Palestinians. Just how I think it's incredibly important for Palestinians to be advocating for Israelis, for Palestinians to say, release the hostages. This is not us. This does not represent us. That is Hamas. That is not us. And I value Jews who advocate for both sides, for all sides, and I support it.
Is there value to his perspective?
There's a lot Ari knows that I don't know. And some of that is about the security realities, and some of that is probably understanding of Palestinians in a way that I don't really have, because my experience is more hypothetical. The tricky part is that we don't agree on what those next steps are.
I think that's the less tricky part. I think the tricky part is actually people sitting down. This is very unusual. I mean, I could not find people to participate. Very, very, very hard. What is not my opinion is what happened between the two of you. What you're expressing as was valuable to you. That's not my opinion. This is my opinion. The path to a solution cannot occur without the warriors and without the pacifists. There is no solution otherwise. You will never lead Israel. You have no legitimacy in Israel because you are a pacifist, and you won't be seen as loyal. It's a warrior who must find peace, and you have to convince a warrior. Not that that warrior is Ari, okay? But the reality on the ground is that Israel has 6 million Jews. They're not going to be convinced by somebody who says, give up Israel. The pacifist is the impetus for peace.
Yeah.
And the concern for Palestinians and for suffering in general is the impetus for peace.
Yeah.
And if the warrior does not embrace that, they will always have war. Mm-hmm. And so my own view is that the conversation between the two of you is the path, the only path. It's for the two of you to regard each other as valuable.
No, I think you nailed it. The pacifism is something lacking in this world. The Palestinian people need a Gandhi of Gaza to save the Palestinian people from the suffering that they're in. I want this war to end, and I want to be a pacifist. I don't want my children to go fight and join the army. I want to live in a world that you believe in.
We need an Israeli Gandhi to also lead the Israeli people to a peaceful solution. I don't necessarily believe that a Gandhi of Gaza would get an audience with the Israelis or the Palestinians.
The Gandhi of Gaza will appeal to Israelis.
Yes.
The Gandhi of Jews will
we've had
appeal
him.
to Gazans, but not to Israelis. Gandhi of Israel will not have any traction with Jews. He will be naive.
We already see that. You know, we have groups like B'Tselem who are cast as being communists because they have been advocating for Palestinian
It's
rights.
the integration.
Look who made peace with Egypt. It was Likud party, it was Menachem Begin who was on the right.
That's exactly
It's
right.
like-
It's the integration of the two of you
Yeah.
that makes peace.
I see the Israeli public are waiting for a voice. And maybe Bibi wouldn't make peace, which I think he could. I think Bibi knows his legacy will be this war. And I think he wants his legacy to be one of success.
Bibi could make peace. I
Bibi
believe
could make peace.
because he has
Hamas-
legitimacy
Yeah.
with the right.
Yeah.
He can't make peace if it's not inside of him.
I'm so disappointed to hear you say that it's been difficult to get this dialogue happening because people on neither side are interested in legitimizing the other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Donald Trump, who I loathe, actually has the right idea about this. He met on this trip in the Middle East with a guy in Saudi Arabia who was one of the masterminds of 9/11. And if you are correct that Bibi is the guy to do it, and that maybe there's an analog on the Gaza side who will step forward and say, basta, enough. I mean, that's how all these, pernicious wars, that's how El Salvador finally ended after 30 years. Adversaries said, we're tired. Here's a controversial thing. 10/7 will go down in history as an atrocity. It might also go down in history as an atrocity which catalyzed the end of the conflict.
I would love for this October 7th to be the war of independence for the Palestinian people, but that cannot be if Hamas are the people leading their government. They must acknowledge evil and release the hostages.
I want to ask the two of you in closing, what wisdom can you offer the people who haven't been through this conversation? The people on your side in particular.
To me, that's the same lesson I have in my marriage. Listen.
Yeah, I agree. Most people in the world live under a dictatorship and live under oppression, and it sucks to have these tough conversations within your own people. I fear that others don't value the respectful arguments as much, and people just jump to name calling and cancel out other people's opinions and identities and values and don't truly listen. Take the things that you're proudful of and advocate for them, not to call them out or call somebody racist or anti-Semitic because of it.
What I said about having a hard time finding people means that those people feared mostly repercussions. Repercussions from their own community, repercussions from the other community. And so you both took a risk. Maybe you perceive it as a huge risk, maybe you perceive it as a little risk, but other people perceived it as a large risk. And so I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
That's selfless from my standpoint. Ken, post-Zionist Jew, I'm glad you were born. I'm glad I found my way to you. And Ari, strongly Zionist Jew, I'm glad you were born, and I'm glad I found my way to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here we go. What a talk.
Shortly after Ari returned to Israel, the IDF recovered the body of his good friend, Yonatan, and so his funeral finally occurred, a tragic yet healing day. In the comments, some will take the anti-Zionist door one. Ari and Israelis are ethno-supremacists. Their fear and pain deserve no empathy. Others will take the super-Zionist door two. Ken is a traitor to the Jews. He'd see his own people eradicated. I hope most of the audience takes door three. All Jews, including Zionists and anti-Zionists, and all Palestinians, those who despise Hamas and those who support Hamas, are afraid that those they love will suffer and die. Denying the fear and pain of one's perceived enemy emboldens that enemy. No people trust another people who are indifferent to their suffering. Ken and Ari opened door three. Despite their anger and disgust, they tried as best they could to listen and to care. They showed us the world we want to live in.